Nigeria's National Assembly were meeting on Thursday, and they were discussing Budget 2018. Meantime, that was the day the preliminary meetings of OPEC was going on in Vienna. So the legislators decided to keep their fingers crossed until OPEC decides what Nigeria's output will be for 2018. Then we got the news. It was going to be 1.8 million barrels per day. That was a little bit of a shutdown from what a few hundreds of thousands of barrels down from what the president presented in November, and the first week of November, as our outlook for 2018 budget. So, is the budget now in the water or under the bus, wherever it is? Dolapo Oni, head of energy research at EcoBank, Nigeria. This is one of the most important conversations for this week, if you're interested in what happens in 2018. And you should be interested. I'm interested. Good morning. I hope you're interested.
Yes, I am. Very interested as well.
Very interested. So where is the budget right now?
Okay, to be fair, again, it's always important to clarify, because whenever OPEC mentions barrels, most times, OPEC doesn't include condensates. OPEC always tends to include condensates in their own natural gas liquids calculation, which means when they say 1.8 for Nigeria, they're really referring to our crude oil production, our pure crude oil production. Now, when you include our condensates, which we still tend to always include in our own calculations, Nigeria produces about 360,000 barrels of condensate. That's APO, that's Agbami production, a bit of also condensate as well, Pennington Light and all that. So you combine all that together, you have roughly about 400,000 barrels per day, which should be, which takes us to about 2.2 million barrels per day. So again, just to clarify that, the budget is based on the gross production figure, which is 2.3, rather. That's what the budget is based on. But what OPEC is capping us at effectively with 1.8 is that they're capping us at 2.2 million barrels per day. Okay? That's if you include our condensates. Now, if you don't include our condensate, that's what OPEC then says 1.8. But once you include our condensate, which OPEC doesn't count or doesn't regard, that is 2.2 million barrels per day. So, again, where does that place our budget?
Where does that place the common man? Hold on a second before you get technical with me. Where does that place the common man when we say this is 1.8 or 2.3? What figure are we really taking to the marketplace?
Good. We're taking 2.2 to the marketplace. The OPEC 1.8 refers purely to our crude oil production. Purely to pure crude, which is 25 degrees API and above. Now, to about 45. Now, 45 to 53 tends to be condensate, and that's the portion that OPEC doesn't recognize as part of your main crude oil production.
So we still produce that?
So we still produce that.
We sell that?
We sell that.
We make money on that?
Exactly.
Then we bring it home?
Exactly.
Okay.
So that leaves our budget at 2.2 million barrels per day, which means that, now the other part of this, which again we have to recognize, is the fact that we've got Egina coming on next year as well too.
Yeah, the FPSO.
Exactly. Egina is 200,000 barrels per day. Now, part of the issue with Egina is the fact that Egina is coming to replace mostly a bit of production that will also be maturing and declining next year. But still, it should add, at the very least, about 100,000 barrels to our gross production. So the question is, how are we going to stomach that now? Now that we've got this cap on our production. I imagine what's going to have to happen is that NNPC is going to have to scale back on some of its own barrels, because again, it's going to be difficult for you to tell people that they have taken an FID that also you can't produce your full barrels, or when they've already mapped it into their production calculations. And
that's for the IOCs and the LOCs.
And the LOCs, exactly. So it's going to have to be the federal government stake or NNPC stake that's going to have to be capped at some point. So again, it still comes down to the budget. So what I see is how much of a compensation we can get from prices. If oil prices stay in the $55 to $60 range, then we're fine. Because what that does is it effectively compensates for the barrels we won't be getting. But if oil prices start to dip below 55 into the low 50s and the high 40s, then I think we start to experience some issues.
If we use 2017 as a mirror of our 2018 budget, what does that tell you from how the legislators increased the benchmark price? And there was a lot of hula-baloo about that sometime between May and June before the budget was signed. Well, of course, after some time, it was agreed one way or the other, and then we moved on, as it were. Now we have 2017 budget, which is currently somewhere between limbo and whatever.
I'm a bit worried about that fact, because again, when it comes to moving the issue of the budget benchmark, it's always worrisome to me, because I feel we should just leave it where it is, so that we have enough excess to build up our our reserves, to build up our savings as a country. But the budget, the senators always tend to look at the fact that we seem to be borrowing so much. So they always feel, okay, we need to move this a bit so that we can accommodate, we can take in more revenue, and we can actually do maybe less borrowing. But if you think about it this year, something wonderful happened this year. After the collapse happened in 2014, 2015, our earnings from oil dipped significantly. I mean, up to a point where in a month, Nigeria was getting maybe like $500, $300 million a month from just oil. But in 2017, we saw the revenues rise up back to 1 billion a month. If at the point it was over $1 billion a month.
The 1.2, 1.3.
Yeah, 1.3, 1.4 billion a month. So what that did for us was to really boost our reserves, and you can see where our foreign reserves are currently.
So it boosted reserves and all of that, but we're still borrowing.
Revenue, but we're still borrowing because, again, oil is was not everything in terms of government revenue. Oil was about, so far this year, I mean, oil has been a significant part of government revenue, probably over 70%. But non-oil has also picked up a bit. Now, next year is going to be a different picture because I feel on the non-oil front, we have a lot more to do. We haven't seen, if you look at the GDP for the non-oil sectors, it actually has been in decline. And it remains in decline even as we speak. Now, what that means is that we've been able to increase non-oil revenue mainly because we've widened the tax brackets. We've brought in more companies, we've brought in more people, and then we have V8s also coming up next year, which should still continue to help us milk out as much as we can. But the thing is, if the sector is not growing, if the non-oil sector is not growing, there's only so much you can force out in terms of taxes. So you still have to do something on non-oil. So what I expect from the senators will likely be that they will still try to increase that budget benchmark.
So you expect that from